So this guy tagged me in a video that rated Louisiana as the worst state to live in. And as a Louisiana resident, tell me something I don't already know. And now he's trying to argue that libertarianism would actually make my state even worse. Which tells me he knows nothing about why living in Louisiana actually sucks. First and foremost, Louisiana has by far the highest incarceration rate of any state. Yeah, that's not very libertarian given that libertarians are staunchly opposed to the police state. And most of the people currently in the Louisiana prison system are there for victimless crimes, such as, but not limited to, marijuana possession, which has pretty much been decriminalized in pretty much every major metropolitan area in Louisiana. Now, if Louisiana was more libertarian, if there isn't a victim, it wouldn't be a crime to begin with, and anybody currently serving time for such victimless offenses would be pardoned. Meanwhile, Louisiana's violent crime rate, particularly in major metropolitan areas like my hometown of Baton Rouge, is through the roof. And while leftists like this like to point out that Louisiana is a red state, what they forget to mention is just about every major city in Louisiana is controlled by Democrats and has been for the last 20-30 years. In fact, that is actually my primary area of focus for my campaign for Metro Council, which I will begin later this summer. As Baton Rouge's first Libertarian Metro Council member, the first order of business is going to be to abolish all victimless crime. Marijuana should have never been illegal to begin with. I don't care if you're selling, growing, smoking, I don't care. It shouldn't be illegal. The only way it should be a crime is if you're driving under the influence. Other than that, there's no victim at all. And before anybody makes a joke, shut up. Nobody wants to be stuck behind you waiting for a green light to turn green. Seriously, traffic is bad around Baton Rouge as is. As far as every other drug, I want to completely decriminalize the minor possession of it. Plain and simple, addicts need treatment, not prison. And another victimless crime I want to do away with is sex work, because I don't care what goes on between two or more consenting adults. As my namesake supposedly said in defense of a literal prostitute, let he who is without sin be the first to cast stones. Plain and simple. The war on drugs hasn't stopped people from doing drugs. It just empowered the cartels and incentivized the police state. Prohibition didn't stop people from drinking. It just empowered the mafia for the same reason. And now we have a growing concern over sex trafficking. Guess what empowered sex traffickers? Criminalizing consensual sex work between two or more consenting adults is the primary cause for the rise of sex trafficking. Decriminalize sex work. Get the government out of it. And guess what? Those who consent to that lifestyle would be more willing to work with police and law enforcement. Which brings me to the big concern with police brutality, especially in a city like Baton Rouge. Between the murder of Alton Sterling in 2016 and the recent scandal last year with the Brave Cave, people in the city do not trust the police. So here's my deal. I'm going to use the funding that we would use on victimless crime to go after all the violent criminals, specifically. I want to go after the rapists, the murderers, the gangbangers, the whole shebang. If you're hurting people, you belong in prison. If you're smoking a little griefer, you're not hurting anyone. What goes on between two or more consensual adults, not the general public's business. And as far as hard drugs, like I said, addicts need treatment, not prison. So get all the people currently serving time in prison for victimless crimes out of prison and put those violent criminals who are actually hurting people in their place. And after we get violent crime under control here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I'm going to work towards abolishing the police and putting the sheriff in charge of all law enforcement duties. More accurately, I kind of want to absorb the Baton Rouge Police Department into the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Department. All the funding, all the manpower that previously was under the jurisdiction of the BRPD will now be under the jurisdiction of the sheriff. And before you say, how is that going to work? It worked in Sorrento just south of Baton Rouge. You see, the police chief is appointed by the mayor. And therefore, the police department gets bogged down in all types of political nonsense. On top of that, the police have unions that keep bad apples on the job. Sheriff can hire and fire at will. And if the sheriff is corrupt, guess what? You can vote him out. You can recall him. And in the most extreme cases, well, just do some research on the Battle of Athens. And I'm not talking about Greece, I'm talking about Tennessee. So, no, libertarian policies will not hurt Louisiana. They're the solution to Louisiana's biggest problem.